Hey, I'm Siobhan, and I love talking about all the things related to freedom and personal growth. And I'm on a journey to redefine freedom on my own terms as I become the woman I desire to be. Each week, I'll share in real time what I'm learning as I do my inner work while creating a safe space for my listeners to feel seen. If you desire to be free and live a life that feels good to you, then you're in the right place for beautiful conversations that's going to support you on your journey to freedom. Welcome to the Siobhan J. Middleton podcast. Now let's start the show. Hey, welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I'm your host, Siobhan. And as always, I'm so happy that you are here again for another week where I share in real time how I am redefining freedom and living my life how I choose to live it. And my hope is that each week you'll be inspired to, number one, discover what freedom means to you, and then live the life that you desire to live. This week's episode is going to be a little bit different because I've never reviewed a movie on my podcast before. And even it feels weird just doing it, but also I was so moved by this movie that I'm like, I got to talk about it on my podcast. And this movie was not on my radar at all. It was suggested to me by a guy that I'm talking to. And I was so intrigued because he said it was one of his favorite movies. And I'm like, okay, if it's one of your favorites, let me take a look at it. This movie, My Dinner with Andre, was released in 1981. And it's about two old friends who haven't seen each other in 5 years. And they go to dinner to catch up. One guy, his name is Andre. He's a well-known theater director. He left his career, and it seems like at a high point, to go and travel the world. And then the other guy, Wally, he is still figuring out his way and looking for success. And so the whole movie takes place at a restaurant, and they're having dinner, and they're just having this long conversation. And it is the most amazing conversation to witness because it felt like, it felt like what I have been teaching and sharing for so many years, but now it was in a movie form, and it almost feels like their conversation could totally be a podcast. And you just see how different their worldviews are based on Wiley still being in a space of trying to figure out his life and success, while Andre has traveled the world and found success in a different way. And I will say, again, this movie took place in 1981. And if you're into monologues, I think you'll enjoy it. Just know that with me, about to share some key things that resonated with me. If I'm talking about this on the podcast, then you already know it's something that you're going to want to watch. I think you can watch it. There's clips obviously on YouTube, but you can watch the movie if you have Max. That's where I watched it. And I watched it the first time, and the guy I'm talking to, he said, just get past the first hour. The last 50 minutes is basically the meat of the movie, and I couldn't agree more. And if you're going to watch it, just know it is as my friend said, it is a slow burn. Okay, so keep that in mind. But when you get to like the last, I would say 50 minutes of the movie, I want you to be all in and pay attention. I'm going to share some of the thoughts that I have as I was reading it, but I'm going to share some of the thoughts that I had as I was watching it, because I was taking notes, because I did watch it twice. Because the first time around, I'm like, okay, all right, man. And there were some points that brought me to tears. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so rich. This is so good. And I'm like, let me watch it again. And then him and I had a conversation about it. Then I told my great friend, because I had shared it in my IG stories, and she was like, if you are recommending this and you're suggesting it, I'm totally going to read it. I'm totally going to watch it. So just a few points, and I don't think these will be spoilers. It's more so this is some of the things that I took away as I was watching it. And I'm thinking like, even what I'm going to share with you now, there is so rich that I really want you to watch it for yourself and see what you take away from it. And if you're a deep thinker like me, again, this movie is a must. So the opening line said, and I'm quoting, "When I was young, all I thought about was art and music. Now I'm 36 and all I think about is money." And this is the opening line that Wally is sharing as he's getting ready to go and meet Andre for dinner. And when I heard him say that, it made me wonder, because it's so relatable, right? We all, I would think, we have dreams, that, when I grow up, I want to do this and I want to do that. And at some point in life, you stop dreaming. You stop chasing your dream. You stop creating a vision for your life. And the focus becomes about work and paying bills and money. But what happened to the dream that you had? Where does that go? And where does that shift happen? Is it something that happens while you're in school? Is it after you get your first job? When did it become about money and you stop thinking about the art that you want to create and whatever that art is, right? I think about my daughter, and I've been having this conversation with many people, and I'm like, and I may have said it in the podcast as well, she is the only person that I know that at such a young age, she knew what it is that she wanted to do, which was to be an artist and go to art college. And now being 18 years old, the very dream that she desired is now her reality. She leaves for college this fall, going to one of the most prestigious art colleges. She has fulfilled her dream at 18 years old. And she's so excited about it. And I'm so excited for her. And I'm like, but I don't know many people who at a very young age, they have a dream and they will stick to that dream no matter what. And even with my daughter, there has been so many negative comments, that I have constantly had to manage and then help her to reframe, to affirm her, because people love to say, oh, you're going to be a starving artist, or artists don't make money. And even when we went to, a couple of weeks ago, she got awarded a $500 scholarship, and she was invited to this dinner. So her and I went together, and we're at this table, and I'm just going to say it, full of all white people, and we're the only Black people there. So imagine how that feels, right? And we're in a predominantly white neighborhood, and I want to be very mindful, but I'll say this part. While sitting at the table, one of the people at the table said, "What are you going to do? You don't want to be a starving artist." And my daughter, she's learned how to respond, but also it's frustrating. And so, of course, being her mom, I didn't interject at that moment, but I definitely circled back to that conversation. I said, and just like I'm explaining here, I said her dream has always been to go to art college ever since she was 12 years old. She's been an artist since she was 9, and she's not going to be a starving artist. I said, there's so many artists that do amazing work in the world. And I said, don't forget, remember her name, because her art will be up in your walls, right? Her art is something that you're going to see worldwide. Don't say that to my baby. But not only do adults do this, students do this, everybody. And it's like, we have to be mindful of what we share. And so when I think about my daughter and I think about this quote, she has, first of all, she's a phenomenal artist. Y'all hear me talk about her all the time. And I believe that because she is going after her dream at such a young age, that is going to always be her driving force, right? Not saying that money won't be something that's important to her, but I don't feel like that. I honestly feel like for her, all she wants to do is create her art. All she wants to do is paint, and she is
like, oh my gosh, she's amazing at it, obviously. Um, but it makes me wonder, like, for you as you're listening, what is your dream, right? Have you given up on your dream and now you just go to work every day, um, paying the bills, and you lost sight of the very thing that lights you up inside? Another thing that was said during the movie, and I believe Andre said this, for the first time, I know what it feels like to be alive. And Andre is the one who traveled the world, right? And so when he said that, I'm like, the reason that one would feel alive is because they're doing the very thing that their heart desires, right? Like, you're not caught up in the matrix. And it made me think, like, well, do you feel alive? Do you feel alive? And I really want you to think about that question. Like, what do you feel? Like, what in your life makes you feel most alive? And if you don't, right, if you can't name anything, then this goes back to the work that you need to do, the inner work that you hear me talk about every single week, so that you can live the life that you want. And I just feel like so many people can relate to not feeling alive in their own life. Like, yes, you're breathing and all of that, but like, when you look at your life, like, are you really excited about it? Does it feel the way that you want it to feel? Another thought that came up was, and I believe Andre said this as well, and I feel like as I think about the movie, Andre was the one that I was able to most relate to. And I think because of my desire to be free, right? And the work that I'm doing to create this free life for myself. And so he said, how present are we to our lives versus doing things out of habit? Now, there are some areas of my life that are habitual, that I do. But one of the things I believe when I said at the top of the year, like, I want to be more present to my life. Like, I want to feel the magic of it. I want to smell, I want to hear, I want to have these experiences. And I don't want it to just feel like I'm just going through the motions or I'm just doing habits. No, I want to actually feel alive. And so I want you to think about that as well. Do you really think about what you're doing, or are you on autopilot? And by being on autopilot, are you disconnected from self? And as I'm thinking about this, I'm going to stop and say, please grab a notebook. And I want you to write some of these questions down, and I want you to journal about them. I want you to really reflect on what is coming up for you as I'm sharing this. And then go back and listen to this episode as often as possible, because as I was watching this movie, and again, I watched it twice, I'm going to watch it again. I feel like so many people are existing in life. Like, they are existing, they're going through the motions, and they're not really appreciating the life that they're living. And so they'll complain and they want things to change, but yet they're not doing anything to change. And let me make it very clear. Changing your life is hard. It is extremely hard. I know it. And also, it is possible to change, right? And when I was watching the movie, they used this When I was watching the movie, they used this illustration of being asleep to your life. And I remembered, I've talked about this in a podcast before. I was very in a deep, deep sleep to my life. And it makes me emotional when I think about it, because I didn't even know it until I turned 40. And I looked at my life and I'm like, how did I get here? Like, this isn't what I dreamed for myself. Like, it doesn't feel like I want it to feel. And I had to make a very hard decision, and I've talked about this many times on here, but, I had to walk away from a marriage that was not healthy for me in any capacity, right? And I remember telling my friend, like, once I had that initial conversation with my ex, and we would go through this whole process that took 2, 3 years, my greatest fear was that I will fall back asleep. And what I meant by that is that I would fall back into the habits and the patterns that I was doing before, and it'll be another year and another year and another year. And I'm telling you, I was like, I just don't want to fall back asleep again. And when you start to wake up to your life, you begin to feel different. You begin to see things different. I remember going on a walk one day, and I'm walking down the street, neighborhood I'm always in, I'm same path I always take. And when I tell you everything looks so bright and vivid, like things that have always been there, I was able to notice for the first time. And I'm like, okay, that means you're staying awake, and if you can relate to that in any way, in any capacity, in any shape or form, like I advise you to tap into what is making you feel that way and what can you do, the small little thing that you can do. And even that small thing is truly a big thing, because for me, walking away from a marriage after so many years and having children and have built a life together, that was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And also, I had learned to love myself enough that I was willing to risk whatever came up for me so that I didn't have to live a life that did not honor what I truly desired. A question that was posed in the movie, I believe it was posed in the movie, I don't know, I wrote this down, but oh yeah, it was. A question that was posed, I think Wally, I can't remember if Wally asked this question or Andre, but it was, don't you see comfort as dangerous? And I was like, yeah, it is. It definitely can be, where you can be so comfortable in the life that you created, because it's all a choice, right? But even the parts that are uncomfortable, because of the uncertainty and the change it will take to do something different, you would rather stay comfortable because it's too scary. It's too scary. The question that was posed was, don't you see comfort as dangerous? And when I heard that, I was like, yes, comfort can be very dangerous, because you can get so comfortable with the discomfort that you will live a life that does not feel true to who you are. And oftentimes people live in comfort, even if it's dangerous, because they're too afraid of the uncertainty and the change that it would take to do something different. And then another thing is that they care more about what people will say, how people will think, and how people will feel, that it's easier, and I'm using air quotes, to just stay in that space versus getting out of an uncomfortable situation. And I know it because I lived it for a long time. And I remember when I first decided to leave my marriage and we went to counseling and we did all the things, I'm like, okay, maybe we can work on this. And then it came a point and I'm like, no, this is not going to work. I'm evolving and changing in such a way that who I am now and who I'm becoming, there will always be a disconnect between us. And I knew that I had to choose myself, even when it was scary, even when I would break my children's heart, and that's not something a mother would ever want to do. But again, in order for my children to get the best version of me, I knew I had to leave. And so people are living, and I know this because this was me, and they talked about this in the movie, in a mental prison, right? The amount of people that are unhappy with their lives is so sad. And they won't change, but yet they'll continue to complain. And again, it's hard. It's very, very hard. And I understand why people stay stuck. I do. I totally understand that. But also, I really think that with the proper tools, the skills, the support, I think you can change. I really, really believe it. I mean, if I have been able to transform my life, and I shared this on Instagram the other day, like I went through my feed and you could visibly see how different I look from today versus 6 months ago, a year, 2 years ago, I am not the same person. And what has been happening is every single day I'm taking a step forward, even in the discomfort. And I believe we're all, in some way, can relate to being in a mental prison. And I talked about this, oh my gosh, like last year, like it felt like I was in a cage. And when I read the book Untamed, which, you can go back and listen to me kind of break that down on one of the episodes, I don't know, but I know Untamed is in the title. That's what it felt like I was in a cage and I needed to be free. In the movie, it was also stated that we are like robots walking around because of our conditions and that we're in a fog. And again, it's one of those things that I know that's relatable to everyone. And there's a quote that I want to read. He said, I think Andre, there was a quote in the movie that said, if we allowed ourselves to do what we do every day, there's a quote in the movie that says, if we allowed ourselves to see what we do every day, it would be nauseating. We see what we want to see. So I want you to think about this. If you were able to step outside of yourself and watch yourself for 24 hours, how do you think you would feel about the life that you were living? Think about all the interactions, right? The people that you talk to on a daily basis, whether at work, at home, the food you choose to eat, like the places you decided to go. Like if you were able to watch yourself, you probably would be very sick at the choices that you're making because they won't feel like your own. And I commend the people, because I know there's some that's listening that they are free. They are living the life they want. They are doing the inner work that I talk about every week. And I love that for you. And then for those that feel like they're in a fog or a mental prison, or you feel like you're asleep, there is always time to change your life because there's still breath in your body. And the change could be something small every single day, okay? Another thing that stood out that was said is everyone is performing. No one really speaks their truth. And I was like, man, I know there's some aspects of my life where I can be more honest and that I'm working on. And this was me for a very long time too, because I knew something felt off. I knew something didn't feel good, but I'm like, what do you do with that information? It is so scary. But we create these narratives in our mind and that becomes our truth when a lot of times it won't ever happen the way that you think that it would happen, right? It's like you create this story, but the way that it works out is very different than what you thought it would be. A couple more things I want to share is, I believe, so another thing that was said in the movie is that comfort and surviving is equal to living a mediocre life. And I want to ask, again, does your life feel like you want it to feel? Like, are you living in the home that you want to live? Are you in the relationship that you want to be in? Are you doing the career that you've always wanted, right? Like, are you fulfilled in your life? Does your life feel like you want it to feel? And I'm going to leave you with this last quote. And then again, I would love for you to listen to this episode again and again and make sure that you either email me, you comment on this week's newsletter when I send it out, you DM me on the gram. Let me know what you think of this episode. And if you watched the movie, please let me know if you watch it because I truly want to know. And this quote says, do we always have to be doing versus being? Does the work we do have to be purposeful? Because you can be so busy doing all the things and be dead inside. So I'm going to leave you with these final 2 questions that really resonated with me. Do we always have to be doing versus being? And does the work we do have to be purposeful? And this reminded me of when my friend told me several years ago, like, Siobhan, rest is built into your journey, because I was always doing. I did not know how to be. And I couldn't even understand at the time when she said that to me, like, what do you mean? How am I going to not do? How am I going to rest? I get it now. And I don't ever want to be so busy in my life where I'm doing, and I'm not being. And I think in the movie, he says something to the effect, we can be doing all these things, but be dead inside. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I know that feeling and I felt it for a long time. But now, honestly, I promise you, I feel so alive. I feel so alive. And it makes me emotional at times because my life now is a complete contrast to what it used to look like. And this is only a couple of years ago. And even when I think about dating now, like the way that I am approaching it is from a space of freedom where I get to do what I want. I get to feel how I want to feel. I get to choose. And that feels amazing to me. So I hope that there's some key takeaways for you. Again, this movie, I didn't know what to expect, but I'm so glad that it was shared with me. And it speaks to what I've been talking about for years and years and years. And it's one of those movies where I feel like I'm going to revisit often as a reminder of the life that I want to live. And I don't want to get stuck in the mundane of things and not be living a life that's true to my heart, And so I hope that you feel the same. And I hope that you find the tools, the support, the skills that you need to really be free. And you must first define that for yourself. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I would love, love, love if you were inspired, if you learned something new, if you feel encouraged, you can treat me to a cup of coffee. The link to do that is in my show notes. Please subscribe to my weekly newsletter where I go more in depth and share more things. And I send that out on Sundays. And then you can also become a paid subscriber to the newsletter. And really, that's just supporting my work in any capacity. And that is amazing as well. And then lastly, share this episode with a friend. Share it on social media. And please don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed. Rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Rate it on Spotify. Leave a comment on YouTube. Please, please, please share the episode. Leave feedback. Send me a comment. All the things. And sending you so much love and light. Until next time.